Picture this. It's 1820. A mysterious man walks into a hotel in Virginia, and he hands the owner a heavy locked iron box. His instructions are simple. If I don't come back in 10 years, open it. Well, he never came back. And inside that box, 3 pages filled with numbers. Just numbers. Now, here's the crazy part. One of those pages has been decoded, and it describes a treasure worth over $40 million in buried gold and jewels. But the other 2 pages, the ones that tell you exactly where it is and who it belongs to, they've never been solved. Not by the government, not by the NSA, not by a single brilliant codebreaker in 200 years. So, how could one little locked box completely stump the world for 2 full centuries? To get to the bottom of it, we're going to go right back to the beginning, to that mysterious stranger and the incredible promise he made. We'll dive deep into the pages of numbers he left behind, and we'll look at the one crucial breakthrough that proved this wasn't just some fairy tale. Then, we're going to step right into the middle of the big debate. Is this a real, findable treasure, or just the most perfect hoax ever pulled off? We'll see how the hunt has evolved in our digital age, and why in the end, your verdict might be the only one that matters. $40 million. Just let that number sink in for a second. That's the estimated value of the gold and silver alone at today's prices. The jewels, who knows, they could be priceless. And it's all supposedly buried right now somewhere in Bedford County, Virginia. The only thing standing between someone and that fortune is a code that nobody can read. To even begin to understand this puzzle, you have to understand the man who created it, or at least the man the legend says created it. Our whole story kicks off in a small Virginia town with a very charming guest who is about to leave behind an impossible and very expensive legacy. This right here, this is the moment. It's the starting gun for one of America's greatest mysteries. It's just a simple transaction, a guest and a hotel owner, but it would end up echoing for generations. A promise, a locked box, and a man who was about to just vanish from history. So who was this guy? According to the only accounts we have, Thomas Jefferson Beale was like something out of a movie, the perfect, mysterious stranger. People said he was well-spoken, clearly had a lot of money, and he made a really strong impression on the innkeeper, a guy named Robert Morris. After a short stay in 1820, he came back 2 years later, in 1822. And it was on this second trip that he left the box, promising he'd mail Morris the key. Well, the key never showed up. And Thomas Beale? Decades later, when Morris finally got that box open, he found a letter from Beale that laid out a story so wild it was hard to believe. Apparently, back in 1817, Beale and about 30 other adventurers were out hunting buffalo near Santa Fe when they literally stumbled upon a canyon floor just glittering with gold. They spent the next 2 years mining this incredible fortune and then secretly hauled it all the way back to Virginia to keep it safe. The thing that makes this story so compelling is just how specific it is. Beale didn't just write, "We found a bunch of gold and silver." Oh no, he gave a precise inventory, almost 3,000 pounds of gold, over 5,000 pounds of silver, plus a stash of jewels they'd bought in St. Louis. This whole thing reads less like a wild legend and more like an accountant's ledger. It makes the treasure feel completely, tangibly real. All right, so along with that incredible letter, the box held the real heart of the mystery. 3 pages filled with nothing but row after row of numbers. To protect the fortune, Beale had created a puzzle, a set of ciphers that have stumped some of the smartest people in the world for 200 years. Now, to really get this, you have to understand the type of code Beale used. It's called a book cipher, and it's both brilliantly simple and fiendishly difficult at the same time. It's simple because all you need is a key text, any book, any document at all. But it's difficult because if you don't have that exact key text, the same edition, same printing, those numbers are just meaningless junk. You could have 1,000 supercomputers working on it, but without the key, you are locked out forever. Okay, let's just walk through this so it makes perfect sense. Imagine you've got a book. You number every single word in it. The first word is 1, the second is 2, all the way to the end. Now say you want to write the letter T. You just scan through the book until you find a word that starts with T. Let's say it's the 50th word, the. You then write down the number 50. Now, for your friend to decode the message, all they need is the exact same book. They go to the 50th word, take the first letter, T, and voila, the message slowly starts to appear. It's a pretty perfect system for 2 people who've agreed on a secret key ahead of time. So Beale left 3 of these encrypted messages, each one like a different lock on this same giant treasure chest. The first cipher, which we're about to get to, was actually decoded. It kind of works as the proof of concept. It describes what's in the treasure and confirms it's buried in Bedford County.
But the second cipher, well, that's the Holy Grail. It supposedly contains the precise step-by-step instructions to find the vault. This is the code that people have literally dedicated their entire lives to breaking. It's the multi-million-dollar puzzle. And then, finally, there's the third cipher. This one isn't so much about the treasure itself, it's more about legacy. It supposedly lists the names of all 30 men in Beale's adventure party and their relatives, the rightful heirs to this massive fortune. And just like cipher number 2, it remains a complete and total mystery. For decades, all 3 of these ciphers were just unreadable nonsense. Robert Morris, the innkeeper, he gave up. But before he died, he passed the papers on to a friend. And that friend, after 20 years of painstaking work, had this moment of pure genius that changed absolutely everything. He's the one who gave the legend its first real taste of credibility.
Can you even imagine spending 2 decades just staring at pages of random numbers? 20 years of trying every book you can think of as the key? The Bible, Shakespeare, popular novels, and nothing works. It had to be pure frustration. Then, one day, you get an idea. What if the key isn't just some random book? What if it's the most famous document in American history, a document that pretty much every citizen would know? So you grab a copy of the Declaration of Independence and you start counting words.
So he starts the process. The very first number in cipher 1 is 73. He counts 1, 2, 3, all the way to the 73rd word of the Declaration of Independence, which is have. The first letter is H. Okay. The second number is 16. The 16th word is people, first letter P. Then the number 807, the 807th word is the, first letter T. Slowly, painstakingly, a real coherent message starts to form. After 2 decades of total failure, the code was finally speaking. And what it said? It confirmed the wildest parts of Beale's story. It was a complete inventory of the treasure. So the man who cracked cipher 1, he eventually gave up on the other 2. But in 1885, he anonymously published a little 50-cent pamphlet called the Beale Papers. It had the whole story, all 3 ciphers, and the solution to the first one. And this one act basically unleashed the mystery on the entire world. And the world went absolutely nuts for it. Treasure hunters swarmed into Virginia. Heck, even the professional codebreakers at the NSA apparently took a crack at it, and they concluded that cipher 2 looks like a genuine, unsolved encryption. So the fact that one cipher was solved using a super famous document, that gives the whole story so much credibility. But it also raises a massive question. I mean, was it too convenient? This is where the story really splits into 2 totally different paths. Either this is the greatest unsolved treasure hunt in history, or it's the most brilliant con ever designed. And the reason this debate is still raging is because the arguments on both sides are just so strong. On the one hand, the hoax theory points out some serious issues. The language in Beale's letters, it has words that probably weren't even used in the 1820s. Historians have never found a single shred of evidence that a Thomas Jefferson Beale matching this description ever existed. And hey, that little pamphlet from 1885 sold copies, so maybe the whole thing was just a money-making scheme. But then you look at the other side. NSA analysts say cipher 2 doesn't look like random numbers. It has the mathematical fingerprint of a real code. And Bedford County is huge. The treasure could easily have been missed. And maybe most importantly, in over a century, no one has ever come forward with a deathbed confession or any proof to say, yeah, we made it all up. For over 100 years, this hunt was all about picks and shovels and digging through dusty old library books. But here in the 21st century, the search has gone completely digital. Modern codebreakers have some incredibly powerful new tools to throw at this old mystery, but somehow those 2 pages of numbers are just as stubborn as they've ever been. And this brings us to the clue that I think most people just completely overlook. For decades, everyone's been trying to find another famous text, something like the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, the Federalist Papers, the Bible. They've all been tried and they all fail. But stop and think for a second. Why would Beale use a famous public document for his most private message? The first one, cipher 1, that was just the proof. The other 2 were meant to be secure. These ciphers, they weren't intended for us. They were for Beale's 30 partners. A much more logical key would be some kind of private document that only they would know about or have access to. maybe a local newspaper from the exact day Beale checked into the hotel, a business ledger, a personal letter. The possibilities are suddenly endless, and also maybe impossible. This theory introduces the really tragic idea that the key could have just been a single piece of paper that was lost in a fire 100 years ago, which would mean the treasure is locked away forever. This is where the modern hunt gets really exciting. Researchers are now using machine learning, feeding thousands and thousands of historical texts into AI algorithms to look for statistical patterns that might match the ciphers. Entire digital archives of every single 19th century Virginia newspaper are being tested one by one. And you still have new academic papers coming out with fresh theories, like the idea that maybe each cipher has its own unique key document, which would make this problem 3 times harder than we thought. So, after all that, here's where we stand today. We've got 3 pages of numbers, 200 years of searching, a stone vault supposedly 6 feet underground, in a county you could go visit this weekend, and 2 possibilities, each one just as extraordinary as the other.
And so, in the end, the verdict really is yours. You've heard the evidence. Is the Beale treasure real? Is it buried right now in Bedford County, Virginia, just waiting for someone to find the right key document to unlock its location? Or is it the greatest, most elaborate hoax in American history, and every single person who has ever looked for it has just been fooled by a brilliant 19th century con artist? Real treasure or perfect hoax? The only thing we know for sure is that the mystery continues.